Right. Let's begin with in the news. I gotta wait for my cue. Am I good? All right, we're on because this is going live. So there's a lot of news going on. Before I get there, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to everything tonight. Thank you all for your prayers for me. I just want you to know that it's a miracle upon miracle that I'm standing here. I walked into some store the other day. No, I was going to one of my grandchildren's baseball games, and I was walking up a pretty heavy-duty incline. And an umpire came and he said to me, are you okay? Because I was going a little slow. I said, yeah, it's not bad for a guy with no toes. He said, you don't have any toes? I said, yeah, I went to go get sneakers today, and they were half off. Anyway, let's go right away into what's new in the news. Let's talk about, and again, a lot of people love in the news. To be honest with you, in the news is pretty tough. It's tough to hear it all. So just bear with us because I want to give it to you so you understand prophecy and what's happening. Obviously, everyone knows what's happening in America and around the world, but I want to get more specific and show you some of the things. These are the headlines that I've called just from this week. This one says, it's very, very small is what it says. Largely unnoticed, who moves forward with global governance plan? Former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann sounded the alarm Monday about the developments coming out of the World Health Organization, and suggested that the World Health Organization is intent on establishing a platform for global governance through healthcare in the wake of the COVID pandemic. So I won't read it all to you, I'll give you a summation of it. What's happening is they're not meeting secretly, but they're meeting, and they're looking to carve up the world. They're in cahoots with Agenda 2030 from the UN and a green movement, a new green movement. And what they want to do, and they're bold about it, none of our congressmen, she's saying none of our congressmen were here at the meeting, no representatives from the United States. What they want to do is they want to push an agenda for global governance. They're going to do it based on the pandemic. When they were very, very in the front lines on the pandemic, they're saying there may be another pandemic, and what they want to do is they want to get the entire world in a spot where they could be data-based and they can know every single thing about your health, and so that they can obviously control us. And that's what John has written about in the Revelation. He's talking about a one world governance, and the World Health Organization, is using the health of all of the world, the people of all the world, to try to get this database going with every single government. And our government is right on line with it. They are not sending any representatives, but they are definitely doing things to be able to tell them they're on board with it. The UN is pushing it. The World Health Organization is pushing it. The global green is not just America, but other nations are pushing it. So we're very, very close to something being one worldism. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it happen economically. We're seeing it happen politically. And obviously it's going to be happening climate. And they're going to use the climate change to do that. One of the things that article says is that if you have a health problem and your treatment, this sounds strange, but if your treatment will affect the climate of the world, they won't give you your treatment. Now, I don't even know how you determine that, but obviously someone on the board is going to do that. So there's some strange things that are going on. Let me give you a little bit more, and I don't like to tell you about the economy because it is not good. I had a man call me who was very affluent this week and asked me what to do with his money. He says, I'm scared. And I said, well, don't be scared, but it's bad. It's really bad. I've never seen it this bad. This article says this: bankruptcy crisis sweeps the U.S. companies with no end in sight. There is a bit of bankruptcy crisis sweeping the U.S., where companies are filing for bankruptcy at the fastest pace in 18 years. A clear sign of a tightening credit squeeze as interest rates rise and financial markets have locked out all but the strongest borrowers. The increase is most visible among large companies, where there were 236 bankruptcy filings in the first 4 months of this year, more than triple from 2022 levels. I don't know about you, but I've been getting things from my bank asking me to take out CDs and giving me, how many have gotten them, and giving me $2,000. You know why? They want to tie up your money. They want your money because basically there's going to be a run on banks. We've seen 2 big ones fail in California. We've seen some banks right now start to gobble them up. And so our finances are very, very bad in America, worse than they've ever been, worse than 2008. And what's happening is banks are trying to hold on to money because borrowers are going to start taking money out of banks left and right. So the man that called me said, what do I do? Well, you always hear about gold and silver and you hear about real estate and things like that. Your assets right now, liquid assets, are the most vulnerable. If you have cash in a bank, that can be taken. In Greece several years ago, if you remember, they went into bank accounts and they took not just the interest, they took the principal. They took 10% of the people's principal. Now you wonder how a bank can do that. Well, they can. They can, if they're in trouble, they can take your principal. So I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just trying to tell you that the first thing they'll do is they're going to go crypto. It's obviously the writing's on the wall. The feds already have a program in place. They're trying to launch it this year. And what they'll do is they'll have an exchange like they did in 1934 when people had to turn over their gold. So what they'll do is they'll ask you to turn over your dollars. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. I'll tell you how it'll happen. They're going to ask you to turn in your dollars, and in place of your dollars, they'll give you crypto. So if one crypto is worth $10, they may incentivize you by saying, we'll give you $12 for every $10 you bring in. But after a certain time, your fiat currency, your cash will be worthless. So the first thing that I think they'll do is they'll take out the $100 bill. I'm old enough to know when there were $500 bills. How many remember those? I used to work in a bank when I was young, and there were $500 bills. Well, the government came out subtly and said, we're cashing in $500, you can't use $500 bills anymore. If I have a $500 bill, it's a certain note, I cannot cash that in for any money. It's worth something because of its serial number, but I can't go to a bank and say, give me $4, $5, $100 bills. It's worthless. They'll do that on $100 bills. So if you're saving money and you're saving cash, which isn't a bad idea, you may want to trade in those $100 bills for 50s. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of insight. Now, is it going to happen overnight? Probably not. Is it going to happen gradually? It already is. So they're already hands in the works to do that cryptocurrency. The feds want to do that, and it's just a matter of time. Once they do that, the clock will be turned, and you won't be able to do a whole lot more. Again, you'll have time to turn in your cash, and somebody said to me, well, what am I going to do? Well, you'll be in the same boat everybody's in, because everybody's going to have to turn them in. So will you lose anything on that? Probably not. But again, if you have cryptocurrencies, that means that every single transaction you have is known by the government. Right now, if you use your cash, that's not known by the government. But every single transaction you'll have is owned by the government. So several large recognizable companies with hundreds of thousands of employees have filed for bankruptcy protection in recent weeks. Of course, there's several that we know, like Bed Bath & Beyond and Vice Media. But there's a whole bunch more. They have liabilities, and they're filing for bankruptcy, and basically they're going out of business. Let me give you a little bit more. So continuing on to that, this is an article that came out. It says, borrower is servant to the lender. That's actually biblical. Many poor nations are deeply indebted to others, far richer nations. A recent Associated Press study of the 12 nations most indebted to China noted the paying back that debt is consuming an ever greater amount of the tax revenue needed to keep schools open, provide electricity, and pay for food and fuel. And it's draining foreign currency reserves that these countries used to pay interest on those loans, leaving some with just months before their money is gone. It says, of the nations studied, most were devoting more than a third of their revenues to paying off foreign debt. Zambia and Sri Lanka have already defaulted and cannot even pay interest on major construction projects. Listen, we've come very, very close. We almost went into default this month, June 6th. And of course, there was an agreement made, but that agreement's junk. It's raising the debt ceiling another $2 trillion. And so I remember when I used to warn people about the debt ceiling, because when it was at $16 trillion. You know what's at right now? $32 trillion. We are spending money like crazy, and we're not doing it in the right spots. We're doing it because of government handouts. Now, I don't know what political bias you have. I don't know if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not looking to ask that tonight, but I'm going to tell you this. There's a difference. Not much of one, but there's a difference. Let me give it to you in an analogy form. The Democrats want to give away the farm. The Republicans want only the richest to own the farm. That's the basic both sides. Now, if you come to the middle, maybe you'll have a little bit of an agreement. But a democratic government is going to give away more and more and more. And you know who's going to pay for it? You are. And I am. Anybody who works. So we're in that spot right now where they just continue to give. They don't care about the revenues. We had the lowest amount of tax revenues go to the federal government this year than ever before. And people are making more than they've ever made, but the lowest amount of taxes went to the federal government. They can't pay for their programs. So this is how we get in such a terrible situation. In Pakistan, millions of textile workers have been laid off because the country has too much foreign debt and can't afford to keep the electricity on and the machines running. In Kenya, the government skipped paying civil servants in order to pay foreign loans. The sobering reality is that no one knows what will happen in the aftermath of national defaults. No one knows. What does a lender do when the borrower cannot pay back debt? Will foreign lenders be lenient and forgiving, or will they demand something tangible in exchange for money owed? I'm going to stop myself again. Do you remember the Biden administration said that renters didn't have to pay the landowners, or the renters didn't have to pay? I remember that. Well, who pays for their bills? That's a freebie for somebody. This is what happens when you have a default. The Bible is long warned. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. As more nations, including major Western nations, default on loans, international relations and national resources will become frighteningly unstable, causing the world to suddenly look very different. And of course, it's going to look different because we know that when Antichrist comes and that global governance comes, there will be a one world economy and a one world religion and a one world government. So we're watching it just kind of, 20 years ago when I was doing in the news, and I'd have like 3 articles. And I'd try to search, make sure I didn't stretch anything. Now I got to throw articles away because there's so many things going on that's proving John's revelation. Let me give you this one. This is for under war. And boy, I'll tell you, I don't know what America's thinking about, but they're actually not thinking about China. China is on the move. They've been on the move for about 2 decades now. Unthinkable, no more, and unsinkable, no more. China's hypersonic missiles challenges the United States Navy. Chinese researchers are claiming that the world's largest aircraft carrier, which is the USS Gerald R. Ford, could be demolished with absolutely certainty using hypersonic missiles that they've developed. The researchers conducted a war game simulation which showcased China's military sinking the carrier fleet by launching a relentless onslaught of 24 hypersonic anti-ship missiles across 20 intense battles. Their findings challenge the previously held notion that the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier fleet is invulnerable to conventional weapons. It proves it's not. The simulation unfolded in the disputed South China Sea, where the U.S. vessels persisted in approaching an island claimed by China despite repeated warnings. Chinese researchers demonstrated the long-range capabilities of their hypersonic missiles right in front of the United States fleet by launching some from a distance locations like the Gobi Desert. The outcome of the simulation was bleak for the United States, as nearly every surface vessel was shattered and ultimately sunk under the devastating attack. It goes on to say, these findings arrived at a time when China is actively exploring strategies to overcome the U.S. naval defenses in its quest to take over the island of Taiwan. I'll read more of that, but let me just remind you of something I said a long time ago. It's called the Thucydides effect. There was a Greek philosopher named Thucydides who said this. He said, the world's going to face that every time there's a major world nation that runs the world, there'll always be a nation that will come up against it and will overcome it. And it's happened so far 8 times in world history since. He wrote that in 333 BC. We are looking at the Thucydides effect right now with China, not Russia. Russia is not our threat. China is our threat. China is going to do something. What does the Bible say? The kings of the East, that's China, will march over the dried up Euphrates River. So we're watching China develop and play again right into prophecy. In addition to submarines and anti-ship ballistic missiles, China has been actively using drone swarms to overcome U.S. aircraft carrier defenses. What a drone swarm does is this. They have AI on them, artificial intelligence. 2,000 will go out towards a ship. Now ships, carriers, have missiles to take out planes and take out bombs. They have no missiles to take out drones. If they throw a missile at a drone, they hit 50 of them, the drones will still continue to come. And because they have AI, they can change their target at will. So China is way ahead of us. We have absolutely no drone research, no drone swarms like they have. To further enhance its military, aren't you feeling great about America right now? I'm sorry. How many of you want to know? My people perish for lack of knowledge, the Bible says. To further advance its military capabilities, China is investing in robust electronic warfare and cyber operations. Electronic warfare techniques, such as jamming and it's called spoofing, are employed to degrade or destabilize U.S. naval communication patterns, sensors, and our radars. Moreover, China's Navy has rapidly expanded in recent years, now boasting a larger fleet than the United States. That's the first time ever, by the way, with over 350 ships, including surface vessels, submarines, and aircraft carriers. China now possesses a naval force that surpassed the United States fleet in terms of sheer numbers. According to Sam Tanagri, the Ledios Chair of Future Warfare Studies and a former U.S. Navy captain, history has shown that in naval warfare, the largest fleet almost always emerges victorious. The U.S. Navy is struggling to match the rapid expansion of China's fleet. In terms of size and based on current production numbers, it appears unlikely to catch China, with odds of the gap becoming even greater in China's favor. It goes on to say this. China has also made significant strides in developing space weapons that could potentially neutralize or destroy U.S. satellites in the event of a conflict. You know, when President Trump was president, he started the space program. How do you remember? He started a branch of the military to explore space and put weapons in space. He knew what he was doing. We have abandoned that, by the way. When China's multi-phased approaches to overcoming U.S. naval defenses pose significant challenges, concerns have been raised about the U.S. Navy's force. A recent U.S. naval recruitment video featured a non-binary drag queen emphasizing the role of LGBTQ individuals in the Navy has drawn criticism. It should. Many argue that the video highlights misplaced priorities, suggests that the U.S. Navy should be more focused on addressing potential threats rather than diversifying its ranks. Florida Senator Marco Rubio tweeted a portion of the recruitment clip with the caption, "While China prepares for war, this is what they have our U.S. Navy focused on." Listen, you can't throw cell phones at them when they come or blow kisses at them. You're going to have warfare with them, and unbelievably, they're way ahead of us. Let me give you a little bit more and go to religion, show you what's happening there. That's a pyramid that's hard to read, but let me tell you what it comes from. Biden grant recipient, Christian broadcasting path to white supremacy. The Biden administration approved $10,000s of dollars in grants to a program that once taught watching the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, eased conservatives into a path to become a neo-Nazi. So they gave this group, this think tank, I think it was about $600,000 the first time, so that they can watch the conservative Christian news and Fox News and Christian Broadcasting, CBN, saying that they are raising Nazis. So if you watch CBN, the survey says you're becoming a Nazi. And so what they're doing is they're isolating Christians. You can see it over and over again. Matter of fact, our study tonight is going to talk about opposition. Opposition is coming for Christianity. It's coming big time. And it's happening now in the laws. It's happening in a woke environment. But that opposition is part of our, matter of fact, it's going to be my entire message tonight towards the end of it. But it's part of our story. We are going to be opposed. Jesus said it. He said, "They will hate you for my name's sake." Now, we live in the South. We're a little bit insulated. But trust me, we're not that insulated. If you lived in the North, or you lived in the Northeast, or in California, God forbid, and there are people listening to me from California, some great Christians out there, they're holding the fort, but there is a wave coming over America that is totally anti-Christian, and it's happening. It's happening all around. So I'll give you some details on that. By the way, this researcher said, after he did his research with his grant from the Biden administration, "My research and writing have focused on, among other things, Protestant fundamentalism." That's you. That's me. The Christian right in the 1920s and the Ku Klux Klan. So it makes sense that I serve as moderator for this roundtable, said the history professor Bill Trollinger, who's the one that's doing the survey. So he's putting us with the KKK. That is absolutely horrendous to me, that you could be marked something like that. Not only do they not understand Christianity, they do understand it. They know we're for love. They know we're for peace. And they're using it against us because we're not militant. The left is militant. We're not militant. And they know that. And so they'll do anything they can. Lukewarm organizations need not worry, he said, lukewarm. Isn't that interesting? That means that churches are just playing the game, don't have to worry. That's what he's saying. He says, if you don't preach the gospel, this is actually, Franklin Graham said this after seeing this report. He said, lukewarm churches need not worry. If you don't preach the gospel, you don't have anything to worry about. If you're not going to talk about sin, you don't have anything to worry about. But if you're going to try to preach and proclaim the gospel, they're going to try to shut you up. Joe Biden promised to end targeted violence and terrorism prevention program, which several predecessors before Grant had put in. But on his watch, the program the government delivered $39.6 million across 80 grants to teach media literacy and online critical thinking initiatives, among other initiatives, in an effort to weaponize against conservatives, Christians, and the Republican Party. The left in the Biden administration is continuing to weaponize every single government agency they can. And I've been taken off YouTube and Facebook. We're on it now tonight. I've been taken off before because I've said things that I shouldn't say, they said. But if I say something, it's because I'm supposed to say it. The Biden administration is the worst administration this country has ever seen and is deteriorating every single thing around us. And sooner or later, something has to give. Let me give you a little bit more for religion, just so you understand. When I think America is bad, and it is bad, I love America, but as far as its religious tolerance is bad, then I read about things that are happening in the rest of the world, and I realize that we don't have it that bad, even though things are happening. Listen to this. I had to check this out because it was so, I just couldn't believe it, so I checked it out. Report: North Korea sentences a 2-year-old to life in prison after his parents are caught with a Bible. He's 2 years old. He's in prison right now. He's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. According to a new report by the U.S. State Department, North Korea has carried out severe persecution against Christians, including one 2-year-old child who was sentenced to life in prison after his parents were caught with a Bible. The unnamed child's family was also jailed under direction from Kim Jong-un's regime. 70,000 Christians so far have been thrown into jail in North Korea since Kim Jong-un took office, out of a possible 400,000, and thousands upon thousands have been tortured and killed. So I pray that it doesn't get to that point, but I'll tell you what, our world is against Christians. The whole world is. Let me go a little bit further. Christian University under fire for taking a stand against pronouns. I am so sick of pronouns, it isn't even funny. Houghton University sits amidst the rural farmland in south central New York State, a school of about 1,000 students. It has been affiliated with the Wesleyan Church since its founding in 1883. For 140 years, Houghton has been provided an academically challenging, Christ-centered education in the liberal arts and sciences to students. As its website proclaims, Houghton remains focused on preparing and equipping students to serve God fully and faithfully as scholar servants in a changing world. Residence Hall directors Reagan Zalea and Shua Wilmot added she or her and he or him to their email signatures. When they refused to remove these needless qualifiers, the university fired them. The refusal to remove this preferred pronouns from their email signatures blocks was more than an act of administration defiance. Wilmot, for example, calls his stance a matter of upholding truth and justice at the expense of a job, and implied that Houghton was trying to compel him to do something unjust and unethical. Following the fringes, more than 600 Houghton alumni wrote a letter to the school's president, Dr. Wayne D. Lewis, arguing that the employees' fringe is part of a seemingly broader turn against multiculturalism at the school. In response, he didn't back down. He addressed a number of matters raised in the alumni letter. He wrote that Houghton requires as a condition of employment that all employees be respectful of the positions, doctrine, and beliefs of the university. Houghton unapologetically privileges an unorthodox Christian worldview rooted in the Western theological tradition. At the time of their appointment, and again annually, every Houghton employee affirms his or her understanding of and agreement to these commitments. He continued his unbending stance with these telling words: students have many options to choose from for higher education. Very few of these options provide an educational experience through a decidedly orthodox Christian lens. He says, as a black man who was born and raised in the Deep South, I could speak eloquently about such things as racial justice and human dignity. However, he has made clear that his racial heritage does not define who he is. Upon his inauguration as the college president, Dr. Lewis commented, "There's nothing more fundamental to who I am and my identity than my Christian faith. It influences my worldview, how I live my life, my decision-making, and my leadership. Being an American Christian demands a degree of boldness," he said, "that was not necessary just a few years ago." And by the way, it is absolutely true that if there's ever a time for us to be bold, it's now. And when they say they're going to shut me down because I did this or I did that, I'm going to continue to preach the word. I don't know how else to do it. And I'm going to warn because I have to warn. Let me give you a little bit more about religion. This is a school board refused to let church use space due to Christian principles. Let me tell you, this is in Massachusetts. I'll give you a summarization. This church outgrew its facilities. There was no other place they can go except the school. Now, a church, anybody can rent facilities. This is a Catholic church. It's run by the Catholic Church. This is Ascension, St. Vincent. Actually, these are great people. They actually invited me to come back, and so asked me to do an outside Easter service this Easter, which we'll do again. But even if they didn't invite me, if I came and said I want to rent your auditorium, they have to legally rent me an auditorium unless they don't have any space. They have to do it. It's a law. Well, the board decided that there was a LGBTQ guy on the board, and here's what he said. He asked, this is the Pines Church, so he sat the pastor down. They outgrew, this church is growing like crazy. The only place they can go to was this school. So he asked the pastor this. his name was Chris McLaughlin, the school board member. He said, is the Pines Church receptive of same-sex marriages? Do they consider marriages only to be between one man and one woman? He also requested information on the church's position on access to safe and affordable abortion, access to gender-affirming medical care, conversion therapy for LGBTQIA and the rest of the alphabet individuals, and inclusive sexual education and access to the birth control for youth. That's none of his business. You rent the building. You do not ask. Those questions are invasive. And so the church sued them and is going to court. And the church is going to win. That church may win the entire school building. And so I hope it does. All right, let me give you this one. This is going to upset you quite a bit. Moral decay. Yes. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper for you tonight. Chick-fil-A has been woke for years. You just didn't want to believe it. So when the rest of the world lost its corporate marbles, conservatives like to think that there was no place this is one place that would never let them down, Chick-fil-A. As far as they were concerned, the churchgoer's chicken of choice has been solidly built on Truett Cathy's strong family values. While other CEOs took their brands in widely liberal directions, Christians took solace in the fact that at least one franchise could stand against the mob. Now with the news that Chick-fil-A is catering to the diversity, equity, and inclusion crowd, customers feel deeply betrayed. But the reality is, the Chick-fil-A's empire capitulation started years before this. The company's moral compromise didn't happen overnight. For groups like the Family Research Council, the bloom was off the nugget as far back as November of 2019, when, after years of holding the line, Chick-fil-A decided to put as much distance between Christians and their brand as possible. To most people in the public square, the U-turn was completely unexpected. Chick-fil-A already endured years of LGBT abuse, surviving movements to ban them from airports, rest stops, and college campuses. Despite the attacks, the Cathys didn't just weather the storm, they thrived in it, doubling sales since the moment liberals decided it was controversy. To give to a religious charity was their biblical views, but they stopped doing that. Then Chick-fil-A announced it would no longer give donations to faith-based groups like Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes because their positions on marriage and sexuality were too controversial. And by the way, let me give you my own personal one. I just told you about the Easter message I'm going to preach, but I preached one here a couple of years ago before COVID, and we served free breakfast for everyone. Well, some of our volunteers went to some of the restaurants around asking if they would donate some donate some of their food, their breakfast foods here. Chick-fil-A said absolutely not. You know where we got our food from? Burger King and McDonald's. So I know this personally. Chick-fil-A has been lying to us. Now let me go a little bit further. The deflection cut deep for families, millions of whom are driven out of their way to support Chick-fil-A, not because the chicken was good, but because their conviction was better. Before there was a Donald Trump and a Ron DeSantis or a Brian Kemp, the Cathys had proven you could stand on principle and win. If Chick-fil-A thinks that caving into PC pressure will help them grow a company, they may want to check with the folks over at Boy Scouts, see how that strategy worked. Matt Walsh warned that at the time Governor Mike Huckabee was equally blunt. Chick-fil-A made a huge mistake thinking they could appease these people, he told Family Research Council President Tony Perkins, because they can. Days later, another bombshell dropped. Not only had the company stopped giving to Christians, it was quietly funding radical abortion and LGBT activists in their place. News broke that the Chick-fil-A Foundation has funded at least $230,000 to Covenant House, an organization that, among other things, hosts Drag Queen Story Hour. Conservatives were in disbelief, so much so that the Federalists felt the need to spell it out. They said, yes, Chick-fil-A is really funding a group that hosts Drag Queen Story Hour, their headline read. Turns out that wasn't the worst of it. Reporters dug into the business tax returns and found that the chicken chain had also gifted money to the extremists of Southern Poverty Law Center. If you know anything about that, it's horrible. The same leftist bullies that inspired a gunman to storm the headquarters of FRC, that's a pro-marital and pro-life organization, with the intent to murder as many staffers as possible. And in a final act of defiance, he actually smeared Chick-fil-A sandwiches in their faces. So listen to this. The shooter, Floyd Correll, told the FBI he'd picked FRC as a target from the Southern Poverty Law Center's website. Ironically, his outrage was sparked by a 2012 Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day for the Cathys' marriage stance, which our staff had publicly celebrated, the guy who wrote this. Listen, the same family who insisted their corporate mission was to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that He's entrusted to us, quote unquote, have publicly disassociated from groups actually living up to that standard. It stung. Former employees like FRC's Vice President of Communications, J.P. Duffy, were distraught. In a somber farewell to the chain in USA Today, he wrote, "Chick-fil-A once inspired me to live out my values in the workplace. These days are gone." 4 years later, he says, the latest treason is just part of the chain's course. Sadly, Duffy told the Washington Standard, "I've come to expect this from Chick-fil-A, a corporation that has been moving left for years. While they kept their motto and their long-standing closed on Sunday policy, they've made a number of moves to appease the left." Let me continue and give you my opinion in a moment. I know I don't give that up much, but I'm going to give it. The fact that this fast food favorite is now chasing the approval of the DEI crowd is just the fruit of their recent capitulation. The only surprise is that so many Christians have either ignored Chick-fil-A's activism or lived in denial that it ever happened. Maybe they didn't want to believe that the place where they felt at home, the place turned to for comfort in the culture storm, betrayed them. It's certainly a lot easier than the alternative, which is accepting and grieving the fact that this company, a brave holdout for so many years, has run away from the people and principles that made them who they are. Now, I like Chick-fil-A. I don't like it a lot, but I like it. I will never go to another Chick-fil-A. Now, I'm going to tell you, you can do whatever you want. I'm not telling you have to do that. But personally, when I see companies like, especially Chick-fil-A, because they claim to be on my side. So I'm more upset with them than I am at Target because they lied to us. Let me go on and tell you. Now, with the chain going full woke, even hiring a vice president of DEI to prove its allegiance to the left, conservatives are finally forced to face facts. Chick-fil-A hasn't been true to its values for years. And to many, including this writer, their sins are even more unforgivable than any brands on the consumer chopping block. Because unlike Anthropologie, Adidas, Calvin Klein, Hershey, Jack Daniels, Kohl's, Lego, Levi Strauss, Maybelline, Nike, North Face, Sports Illustrated, man, we can't shop anywhere, Starbucks and Target, Chick-fil-A continues to exploit and profit from its Christian reputation. A Christian reputation under the grandson, Andrew Cathy, leadership looks an awful lot like surrender. And so that's what's happening. I hate that for you, but all of us, but we have to make some moral choices. The only way we're going to hurt these companies is by not doing something. Well, everybody's got to do it. No, I only have to do it. I only have to answer for myself, no one else. Somebody say amen to that. All right. I'm sorry, I knew that you just had it right before you came here. I saw the bags. No, I'm kidding. And the Dodgers, boy, I'm telling you what, we're going to have to live in a corner someplace in America. There's no place you can go. Dodgers pitcher blasts team for inviting drag queen nuns. By the way, if you've seen anything about this, it is the most blasphemous thing you've ever seen. Another member of Los Angeles Dodgers speaking out against the team's promotion of a group of drag queen nuns. This is Washington Nationals pitcher Trevor Williams is spoken out against the Los Angeles Dodgers for inviting the Sisters of Perpetual Intelligence to their team's Pride Night. Also, Blake Trinan, a relief pitcher who has been in the major leagues for 10 years, released a statement through his friend Sean Fouts on Tuesday, expressing frustration that the Dodgers were actually going to host this sacrilegious group. I went on Facebook and YouTube last week and said, if you're a Dodgers fan, get another baseball team. I said, if you are a player for the Dodgers or you work on the team, it's going to come down to whether you could support, whether you trust your salary or your convictions. And that's basically what it comes down to. We need to do something. As Christians, we need to do something. You can't just stand by. Let me tell you, somebody said to me, well, why do these woke companies keep doing this? They've lost billions. Target lost $9 billion. And I'll give you that article in a second. How could they do it? I'll tell you how they do it. First of all, Target is owned by Vanguard. Vanguard owns about 27% of it, and almost every one of us in here have a 401k that has Vanguard in it. So they don't care. Target doesn't care. They don't care. They're going to make it up. And the other thing is this. Once one company goes woke and there's a protest against it, we forget about it because another company comes along. And they know that. It's a news cycle. So we forget about it and it goes on. I'm not forgetting about these companies. I'm going to continue to stay strong on it. And again, I'm not forcing anybody to do that. That's your business and what you want to do. But sooner or later, these companies have to at least feel the pinch. Target loses $9 billion amid woke merchandise controversy. This article talks about a man that went in and said Target's also lying to us. They said they got rid of the woke things in their stores. They did not. He documented one in Miami, and he said this. Johnson tweeted this along with the video to 1.5 million followers. Target is lying to you. Target says we remove satanic items. The reality is, here they are, and he shows them. Target says Pride section is for adults only. The reality, groomer child mannequins, toddler onesies, and books. And he goes on to say how everything is still in the store. They have been lying to us. The bottom line, why do they do these things? Because they can get away with it. They can do it because they have large bottom lines. And that bottom line is obviously being affected somewhere, and I'm glad it is. Let me give you another one. This one is, here's Target. I'm telling you, we're going to have to shut ourselves in our house, not buy anything, and eat peanuts for the rest of our life, I guess. The family-friendly entertainment organization Movie Guide is sounding the alarm about an upcoming Disney that features a teenage girl's love affair with Satan. The streaming platform has given a green light to start production on a new German original series titled Pauline. The series follows an 18-year-old girl who becomes pregnant after a one-night stand with the devil. The series creators, who are behind Netflix How to Sell Drugs Online, say the project is very close to their hearts. I guess it is. Philip Koberner and Matthias Merman said, "We were thrilled that Disney loves this coming-of-age story as much as we do, and that we've now been able to begin filming with such an amazing cast and crew." Lastly, Disney's coming-of-age films have been out of touch with what parents want their kids to watch. They often push content with themes around witchcraft, sex, and violence. Last year, the company lost $100 million each for their animated movies, Lightyear and Strange World, which depicted same-sex relationships on screen. Good for them. Movie that they lost. Movie Guide chairman and founder Ted Barr is calling on parents to petition Disney to stop the release of Pauline on the platform. Let's be clear, he says, Pauline is not just another piece of entertainment. Horrifically, this series even portrays Satan as a romantic partner. By normalizing and promoting such a relationship, Pauline sends a dangerous message to young viewers that associate with demons, Satan, and evil acceptability, and even desirable. If released, there will be millions of young viewers who may perceive this twisted and disturbing story as desirable and exciting. The show's attempt to normalize and even promote demonic association is a blatant attempt to blur the lines of morality and make evil desirable. We must act now. To petition Disney to reconsider the decision to platform this evil show. We need to inform the studios that there are still discerning viewers and parents who won't allow this content to be viewed by our children. But he continued, Pauline has not been released yet, and we can still stop this show, I don't know about that, try to, from progressing any further. We need to act fast. And basically, Disney. I mean, can you believe it? So here's the deal. Here's why that's happening. We have a lot of men that have been megamaniacs over the years that have said if you teach the young and you train the young and you continue to train the young, by the time they're old, they'll change your society. And that's what we're watching. We're seeing our young kids change. To us, it's a shock to see LGBTQ and to see gay marriage. Should the Lord tarry, in 20 years, that won't be a shock anymore. 10 years, it won't be a shock. 5 years, it won't be a shock. It'll be accepted. You and I need not to accept it. Somebody say amen. And we need to tell our children and our grandchildren, even if they say, oh, Disney's is okay, sound the alarm. They can still go to Disney if they want to do that, but be a little bit of a barrier to them, a little bit. Say, I wouldn't go there. At least tell them what you wouldn't do. I know it's not comfortable, but we need to do it. Well, that's in the news. Aren't you glad it's over? I am. I'm not crazy about giving you in the news. Oh, I forgot one thing. How many of you heard of or saw King Charles' coronation? They called him King of Kings, by the way, and Lord of Lords. This picture was snapped at his coronation. It's the Grim Reaper. And he's walking in the chapel, right outside the chapel. The Grim Reaper. I vetted this. It's all over the internet. Nobody's saying anything about it, but obviously you can't get in there at all. There had to be some type of satanic service that was going on at the same time that the royals were understanding about and allowed it to happen. So there's a lot of strange things happening in our world. Satan's on the move. And you know what that tells me? The Lord's coming back. Satan's playing his A game, but God's got a greater game than him. Amen. That's in the news. I'm going to go to our study. I don't know if you want to take a break or not for coffee or no break. They're telling me no break. All right, we won't take a break. We'll keep videoing. Let me also say this. We're not taking an offering. I'm kind of opposed to that a little bit. There's a lot of you, that means passing something around. We've never asked for any money. People support us. A lot of you support us. There's a bucket back there. Where is that bucket? Somebody ate it. It's right there. So if you want to give, some of you said, I want to give. And if you want to give, we appreciate that for Mark Ramush. You could just drop it in that bucket. Where's the bucket? Right over there on that counter. Okay? Buy the cookies. So you can't take a cookie unless you drop. No.